And a happy weekend to you, Central Georgia. Hope you are enjoying the blistering heat that we have had as of recently. But we have a few things to talk about before we get into your weather impact extended weekend forecast. And first things first, we've had our fair share of active days on the satellite and radar picture as of this past Wednesday and Thursday. So taking a look at some of the 48-hour rainfall totals over that time period, we've seen upwards to 5 inches in some spots like Taylor County, getting into southern Crawford County. Some areas just slightly lower, maybe about 2.5 inches, 3.5 inches in portions of Macon County, Dooley County, getting into the Eastman area. And then you move farther down to the south and the southeast, and you can definitely see where the bulk of our rain fell over that Wednesday, Thursday period. About 6.5 inches of rain right on the county line between Wheeler and Montgomery counties. I believe both Wednesday and Thursday, that same area recorded the highest rainfall totals 2 days in a row. So obviously 6.5 inches doesn't seem like a lot of rain, but it is over a short time period, and it's definitely oversaturating the soil. So that can result in plenty more water that is going to continue to add to those totals. It can result in some flooding and some isolated flash flooding. So that's why we have this before we get into future view, your excessive rainfall outlook. It's valid through Saturday this weekend, but still all of Central Georgia under a marginal risk. So the excessive rainfall outlook, just like that SPC, the storm risk that we tell you, that level 1 through 5 categories. And this is the level 1 out of 4 on the scale for the excessive rainfall outlook, just meaning some isolated flash flooding could be possible in low-lying areas near bodies of water that don't drain well, or areas like the county line of Wheeler County and Montgomery counties that have received a lot of rainfall already. It's still going to take some time for most of that water at the surface to seep down and get saturated into the soil. And if you just continue to add to those rainfall totals, it will result in the puddling up of some rain in those low-lying areas. So always remember, turn around, don't drown. If you do see a puddle of water, you don't want to drive through it because it can be a little bit deeper than it appears, and it doesn't take much standing water in order to sweep away a vehicle. So now let's get into future view. Let's talk about the rain potential for the beginning of your weekend on Friday afternoon. Friday at 4 p.m. Still predominantly scattered rain in the forecast. We do see a couple flashes of maybe some red, some orange colors, indicating that a couple of storms could be possible, but it's not looking as widespread as what we had on Wednesday and Thursday. Thursday was definitely a day where most people saw some form of rain, and most people did see that rain in the form of some thunderstorms. So the latest run of Future View is hinting at an uptick in activity as we go into the nighttime hours. Not necessarily sure I'm buying this because our temperatures will be cooling down once we reach the sunset hour. So seeing a flare up in activity when temperatures are getting cooler, and if we have a decent amount of rain pop up in the picture a little bit earlier, it's going to overwork the atmosphere. So we'll see if this situation comes to fruition. Otherwise, Friday really looking like that best chance for rain. We kick off Saturday morning nice and dry, but just a couple of scattered green dots on Future View. There may be the possibility of a stray storm or two, but it's going to be very isolated and very confined to just a select few areas, as opposed to the potential for more widespread impacts that we had Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So here's Saturday at 7 p.m., maybe wrapping up the evening. Nice and dry, but the big thing that this does tell the story, most people are going to remain dry as opposed to receiving some rain throughout the course of your Saturday. So let's take it into Sunday and finish out the weekend. A clear start to the morning hours. We go into Sunday afternoon. Once again, those temperatures get warm. We have decent humidity in the forecast. Scattered showers, even a couple of storms are going to be possible, but mainly just 1 or 2 that are really isolated. A very similar forecast to your Sunday as we have on Saturday, but Friday is a little bit more widely spread. So we'll take a look at your weekend outlook. 50% chance of a shower or a storm throughout Friday afternoon and evening. Maybe some rain trying to hang around into the early nighttime hours, but it will be very short-lived if that occurs. High temperature on Friday, 92 degrees. We bump it up 1 degree for Saturday afternoon. Once again, still hovering somewhere in those low 90s, but those temperatures won't tell the actual story. We'll get into those feels like numbers in just 1 minute. But notice the downtick in rain chances. 30% chance of a shower or a storm on Saturday and Sunday. If I had to bet, I would say you're predominantly just going to see some scattered showers if you do catch any rain, maybe a lower end thunderstorm. But of course, these temperatures paired up with some humidity, it could sprout maybe the potential for a strong or a severe storm just over some localized areas. So 93 into 96. The big thing that you notice with this graphic is the downtick in the rain chances from 50% to 30% results in a slight uptick in the high temperatures. And that does make sense because we don't have as good of coverage of rain. That's going to allow for more areas to warm up higher than they would if we had clouds, if we had thunderstorms, if we had showers in the picture, because depending on the time they bubble up, it can inhibit that warm up into that warmest portion of the day around 3, 4, 5 o'clock. We've been getting an early start to the rain most days, so high temperatures haven't climbed as high as they could. So let's take a look at your storm outlooks. Just want to show you this to tell you that number one, we don't have any sort of severe weather risk for your Friday afternoon, none for your Saturday afternoon as well going into the day 2 outlook. And then as we go into the day 3 outlook, it looks like some of those shades are creeping closer to central Georgia. But overall, we have no organized severe weather threat over the course of this weekend. This doesn't mean that we couldn't see a strong or even a severe thunderstorm warning. It's just going to be very scattered. Like I said, not going to be organized and probably not a very good likelihood of even seeing those warnings, but it is hot, it is humid. You can't throw it out of the cards or the realm of possibility during this time of the year. All right, now let's get into some of the fun forecasts, some of your event-specific forecasts. Making Bacon in town on Saturday against Asheboro or Asheville, I do believe. Kicking off first pitch around 7 p.m. Temperatures are going to be pretty warm. And of course, you know that with the humidity, it's only going to feel warmer. So we could be feeling 100 plus by the time you do arrive to Luther Williams Field on Saturday evening. There will still be the slim chance of rain, but rain chances were not looking very impressive for your Saturday afternoon. So I still think you're good to go. Pack the rain jacket just in case, because Mother Nature has a funny thing or a funny way of just dumping some rain on you when you are least prepared for it. But going to be hot and swampy at first pitch and getting better and better as you head into the closing innings. Make sure you're staying hydrated and lather up in some sunscreen before heading out to the ballpark on Saturday night if that's on your weekend itinerary. Pool forecast, going to be a great weekend for the pool. Just be prepared to duck and dodge a stray shower or maybe a stray thunderstorm. And remember, when thunder roars, go indoors. The pool is one of the last places you want to be when there is lightning in the near vicinity. High temperatures somewhere in the mid 90s, maybe the low 90s, but of course it will feel like 100 plus. Jumping in the pool is going to be a great way to beat that heat and keep your body cool during some of these blistering hot temperatures. Sunset this weekend happening at 8:45 p.m. and you'll get a steady breeze out of the west-northwest around 5 to 15 miles per hour on occasion each afternoon. So your grillcast, I really think you're going to be good to go on Saturday and Sunday just due to the wide scattered nature of the rain chances. But for Friday, maybe express a little bit of caution. Just play things by ear, see how that radar's looking, how the skies look outside before taking all of the chicken, all of the steak out to the grill. Don't want to get that sopping wet if a thunderstorm is in the near vicinity of you. So my recommended weekend attire is just going to remain pretty much the same. Sunglasses, t-shirts, and your sunscreen. Don't forget your water bottle as well. But also have the rain jacket, the umbrella on standby just in case you do run around possibly a stray shower or maybe a stray storm. It's always best to prepare for the worst and expect the best. And this whole top row right here is expecting the best and making sure that you're combating the heat. So that's the only downside with plenty of or lesser rain chances in the forecast. We will see an uptick in the heat once again. Some of that rain was a very nice relief in terms of rain-cooled air, knocking the numbers down. It did come in the form of some thunderstorms, however, and that's not the most suitable weather for being outdoors, which everyone's going to be outdoors in the summertime during the weekends. But let's take it a little bit farther. Let's go into your long-range models. This is Monday at 8 p.m. and you probably have caught me saying whenever we see these rain chances pop up on the long-range models, they have been trending a little bit later in the day. So kind of treat 8 p.m. as maybe about 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So push these numbers or push what you see probably ahead about 4 hours. I do believe scattered rain chances are still in the picture as we go into Monday afternoon. Let's fast forward it to Tuesday. Not seeing much that is really definitive of a big scale weather system moving in. Just still kind of locked in this sector of warm and muggy air, but maybe a slight uptick in those rain chances by the time we get to Tuesday. Definitely more so Wednesday. It does look like a lot of the green and blue shades are closer to us in central Georgia. So I think those rain chances by the time we get to the midweek next week, we will see a little bit of an uptick continuing into Thursday. And it just continues to look like spilled paint all over the southeast United States. Whether it's blue, whether it's green, not much agreement whatsoever. So indicating a very unpredictable weather pattern and indicating a very scattered weather pattern, just because everyone, not only us in the state of Georgia, not only us in central Georgia, all of our neighbors down in the southeast are hot and humid, but it does look like down to the south they have some better rain chances. If you have any plans to travel to Florida, then it may be a little bit of a messy forecast over the next week. So let's talk about the morning lows very briefly. Low 70s. Okay, there we go. We got it. Not much change in those morning lows each and every morning. Not much worth talking about. The only thing that you could talk about is just noticeable humidity. Those dew point temperatures going to hover really close to the actual temperatures each and every morning. The afternoon highs are more what you want to know about. We saw I had a 96 forecasted for Sunday. That's not even the highest we climb. How about a 98 on Monday? And then as the rain chances try to increase towards the midweek, it could knock those numbers down. This is still far from certain, but just kind of giving you a first look at what some of the models are saying. And 98, obviously a couple degrees above average. We do have one model that is trying to pick out a 100 on Monday for a high temperature. That's not even taking into account the humidity that feels like temperature. So if we are to see temperatures in the upper 90s, we don't get much in the way of rain. The humidity should stick around and make that feel very, very warm. So Monday, we could be talking possible heat advisory criteria if we're going to continue to see a trend with these warmer temperatures. However, that one model did pick up on a 100-degree day. And this is a graphic I showed a couple weeks ago when we were in that heat advisory criteria. When is our first 100-degree day here in Macon, kind of on average? Well, fun fact number one, we haven't even hit the 100-degree mark so far in 2025. The highest temperature that we did record was during that spell of 2 heat advisories in a row that prompted some severe weather risk. We got up to 98. Then that was the warmest that we have gotten. Of course, feels like numbers have been well above the triple digits each and every day. But the earliest date on record that we have hit a 100-degree high was May 26, and I believe that was back in 2019, so not too long ago. On average, each and every year, typically July 2nd is around the time frame that we do hit a 100-degree high. And the latest time that we've ever hit 100 degrees for the first time in a year has been September 18th. So right now we're definitely falling in the second half, definitely past average because July 2nd was getting into a little over a week ago. So if we are to hit 100 degrees next Monday, we will be a little bit behind average, but it is pretty typical sometime at the beginning of July, maybe into late June. That's when you typically start to flirt with those 100-degree marks, but nonetheless, we'll worry about that if we really do start upticking that temperature in the near future. Let's take a look at your temperature outlook over past your next 7 days. So this is going to start July 18th into July 24th, so the second to last week of summer break for many of you. Well, there is some pleasant news right now. A good probability of some near normal temperatures. But of course, once we get to this time frame, your near normal high temperature more than likely going to be 95 to 96 degrees each and every afternoon. So near normal temperatures are still going to mean hot and swampy, but it is good to not see a good probability of above normal temperatures, which could indicate some upper 90s and maybe even some 100-degree highs. In terms of the precipitation outlook for the same time frame, the 18th through the 24th, it does look like we have a decent chance of seeing some above normal rainfall, and that would actually not be the worst thing in the world. The month of July has actually been off to a relatively quiet start, but we'll get to more on that in just a second. First things first, let's look ahead. Now that we have passed 4th of July, it is the tail end of summer break. And yes, I'm sorry to report the bad news, but back to school will start for some school districts, Houston County and Peach County, I do believe, on July 30th. And then over the course of the next week and a half, we will see other central Georgia districts go back to school, but we will kickstart that on July 30th. Then comes July 31st, and then we turn the calendar into August. And I believe August 1st will be on a Friday, if I am correct. I'll have to do some more research on the calendar. But then after that, the first holiday to look forward to is going to be your Labor Day holiday on the very first day of the month of September. So not much going on in the month of August, but you do have about 3 or 4 weeks of getting back in the swing of things, getting back into school. Then you will have a nice 3-day weekend to go celebrate and get that one last taste of summer before we get into September. And of course, we could be talking a lot about the tropics. Peak of hurricane season happening just about a week after Labor Day. So that's when we see the most frequency of tropical activity. You'll see us show that tropics outlook quite a few times because we'll have plenty of areas of development, and we're keeping an eye on each and every one of them to see which one may have a projected path into the near vicinity of the Southeast, Florida, any of our neighboring states, and of course here in central Georgia like we did last year. So we'll be keeping a very, very close eye on that, and that's when we start to see most of those areas of development pop up either in the Atlantic, either in the Caribbean, or either down in the Gulf. Could even see them off the eastern Atlantic coast of the United States, which actually that was the case just 1 week ago with Tropical Storm Chantal. First day of fall. Now I get to add a new season to this looking ahead graphic. That will be on September 22nd. So it may be the first day of fall, but we know we still like to hover around some of those warm and hot temperatures as we roll into the month of October. It's typically right after the Georgia National Fair, which in fact, that won't be too much longer after that. The fair will get started on October 2nd, but after we get through the Georgia National Fair, that's when we finally start to settle in to some of that cooler weather, and I for one cannot wait because I am already tired of these blistering hot temperatures, but I do enjoy the summertime months. So speaking of that tropics outlook, I did tell you that we're going to be keeping a close eye on this as we move into the next couple of months. Already really have been very diligently watching this. So no activity is expected in the Atlantic Basin over the course of the next week. I have been talking on my extended weather streams a little bit about the northern Gulf as of recently. So you see this area just off the Gulf Coast of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. That is an area that we could see for potential development past that week time frame, but that prediction is even less confident. We're talking a less than 20% chance of that even happening, and that area just even getting an area of potential development designation. So yes, very slim chances of that actually happening, but we'll keep our eyes peeled for anything that tries to get stirring in the Gulf. It does look like the Caribbean is still remaining pretty quiet right now. You do see this pop of convection just south of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, really just north of South America, but it does look like that's kind of your typical summertime thunderstorms down there near South America. What I want to turn your attention to is behind this banner, we can see this kind of hazy brown color, and that's going to be your Saharan dust. Not only is it present right smack dab in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but you can get a glimpse of some of it right over here off the western coast of Africa. So typically this is kind of an area where you do see tropical development. It's more so down here where you actually can see your fair share of convection getting going, but it does look like whatever does try to form right there off the western coast of Africa, it's obviously got to come over towards the west, and it's going to interact with that Saharan dust, that drier air that's really going to inhibit formation and strengthening with anything tropical wise. So that's a big reason why the Atlantic has been remaining quiet. But it hasn't been entirely quiet. I did mention Tropical Storm Chantal. If you missed it last weekend, you were just having a whole boatload of fun for your 4th of July holiday. Well, we did in fact have our third named storm of the 2025 hurricane season. And this one did come closest to us in central Georgia. It was off the Atlantic coast of Florida, kind of rode up the Atlantic coast, made landfall near Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and moved up into North Carolina, resulted in some inland flooding. But overall, other than that, it didn't have any implications to our forecast in central Georgia. It just created a pretty windy day here back home this past Saturday for your 4th of July holiday, which was July 5th. So if you notice, things were really kind of gusty and kind of breezy this past Saturday. That was associated with the wind field with Tropical Storm Chantal, which came after Tropical Storm Barry. Barry obviously didn't do very much when it initially formed over in the western Gulf. It moved on shore into that desert terrain of eastern Mexico, and it did lose its organization. But that moisture still carried a little bit farther north, and Barry was a big reason why there was so much moisture available for all the rain that they did see in central Texas. So maybe not necessarily a named storm, maybe not necessarily anything organized, but the system that was once Barry did have some major implications for that forecast over in central Texas. And then Tropical Storm Andrea was our first named storm of the 2025 season. Formed in the North Atlantic Ocean, dissipated very quickly in that cooler water up there, but it did have a little bit of circulation and organization at one point, had a very short lifespan, but it was our first named storm of the 2025 hurricane season. So far the trend has been really far away, a little bit closer to home, and then fairly close to home in terms of where these storms have formed. Not saying that that's going to correlate to the next name, Dexter, on the list, but obviously it's just showing you all the areas that we have to continue to monitor. Not just the Atlantic Ocean, but it's the Caribbean, it's the Gulf, it's the Western Atlantic Ocean, up the eastern side of the United States. But I did mention that frequency, and here's kind of a graphic to put that into perspective. The peak of the season, when we typically see the most activity of hurricanes and tropical storms. So you do see the number of storms per 100 years. That's going to be here on your y-axis. And then this is going to be your time right here on the bottom on your x-axis. So as we move forward in time, right now we're somewhere right around the July 10th date right here. So you will see a little bit of an increase, maybe more so in the hurricanes and the tropical storms, indicating that our fair share of tropical storms do try to get going this time of year. We just see a little bit of an increase in activity, but as we continue to progress into the month of August, into the month of September, these categories only go up, and then the number of storms per 100 years in terms does go up. And the peak of the season will be on September 10th officially. Then activity will start to steadily decrease, but we're not out of the thick of it yet. As we know, October can be an active month for some hurricanes in past years. Hurricane Helene did occur just last year at the very end of September. Hurricane Michael occurred in the first week of October a couple of years ago. But then eventually the season will really calm down as temperatures get cooler, that Atlantic Ocean water gets cooler, and it will officially end on November 30th. And then we won't talk about tropics for a couple of months. But so far, 2025 hurricane season, we like to look at the averages and how the numbers that we have so far are shaping up to those. So on average, about 14 tropical storms each and every hurricane season, 7 of those which can get some hurricane classification. So that's when the winds get up to about not 39 miles per hour. That's when the winds get up to about 74 miles per hour. So pretty intense, and definitely can have its fair share of impacts, as Hurricane Helene was a high-end Category 1 hurricane when coming through central Georgia. And then of those 7 hurricanes, 3 of them are typically on average major hurricanes. So that means Category 3 or higher in classification. Well, Colorado State, who always does a pretty good job with their predictions each and every year, they did predict an above average season in terms of 17 named storms above that average of 14, 9 hurricanes above that average of 7, and then 4 major hurricanes above the average of 3. We also got a range outlook from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA as short. You can see the range. The bottom of the range goes below average, but barely below average. We're talking 6, 13, and 3. That's on the tail end, really close to those numbers that we typically see on average. Most of the range is above average, so it does look like NOAA does have a good consensus with Colorado State that it could be an above average season, but these numbers are still falling short of what we had last year. I believe we got up to 20 named storms last year. We did have quite a few hurricanes and major hurricanes, getting up to about 4 or 5 major hurricanes, in fact. But we'll see how these numbers shape up as we go into the end of the season. So far, we are at 3 tropical storm names, but of course the activity picks up as we go into the next couple of months, and we'll have to see how many named storms we do add to that list. But I did mention we were going to circle back to the rainfall, not only over the last couple of days, but how we kind of compare to average. Well, July so far has been a dry month, specifically here at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. If you live down in Wheeler County, Telfair County, Montgomery County, it has obviously not been a very dry month. You've gotten your months full of rainfall already in the span of about 2 days. But up here in South Bibb County, we have not recorded much rain whatsoever. 3 days we have recorded rain, but all of them have fallen below 1/10 of an inch. So 5/100ths of an inch of rain on July 7th, July 9th, recorded 2/100ths of an inch of rain, and then 6/100ths of an inch on July 10th. None of those have really put in a substantial dent on this trend right now, where we started near normal, as we always do on the beginning of every month, down to the dry category and down to the very dry category now as we're rolling closer and closer to the midpoint in July. So very dry for the month of July, at least here at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. So the total so far this month, just over 1/10 of an inch of rain, only about 0.13 inches, and we are well below average. You see the average July rainfall, 4.83, so really close to about 5 inches on average every July that we have. Of course, right now at the pace we're going, we are going to get nowhere, and I mean nowhere close to this record set back in 1994. Ring a bell? Yeah, the flood of 94 caused some record amounts of rainfall, 18.16 inches of rain. To put that in perspective, that is 1.5 foot of rain during the month of July. And I'm sure some localized areas, like we talk about the Wheeler counties, the Telfair counties, the Montgomery counties over the course of this past week, some localized areas back in 94, I'm sure, got some higher totals than that. So far in the year of 2025, we have entered a dry stretch here at the beginning of July. We are hovering just over 1.5 inches where we should be at this point in July. But overall, it hasn't done much for our rainfall totals because we had a very wet May and a very wet June. So all in all, we're hovering still about 3.5 inches above average. This is as of July 10th, but I did tell you that when we were hovering back closer to about 5 inches above average, we had a good enough cushion to go into a pretty dry spell like this, and it has been a dry spell up here in Bibb County fairly over the past week and a half or 2 weeks. Other areas definitely would be very interested to see where their totals are comparing to that average, especially down in our southeastern counties. But now taking a look at your drought monitor, and yeah, you guessed it, even though we still have been in a pretty dry stretch in some areas of central Georgia, we don't find anyone in any kind of abnormally dry or drought conditions. This was taken as of this past Tuesday, as of July 8th. The only spots we see that are indicating some abnormally dry areas are going to be just north of Augusta, right there on the Georgia-South Carolina state line. This one looks like it's up on the I-85 corridor, getting closer and closer to Lake Hartwell. And then down here to our south and our southwest, just a patch of some yellow in southeastern Alabama, just across the state line of Georgia. That is getting closer and closer to Dothan, Alabama, I believe, down there. So nothing to worry about in terms of some drought conditions, even though it has been a relatively dry stretch. So that's going to do it for your Weather Impact extended weekend forecast. Feel free to come back and watch this as you please over the course of this weekend. But if anything is to change with this forecast, of course, us on the weather team will be letting you know. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back on Monday at 10:30 for another look at your extended forecast.